Right. Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to be together, even if it is, again, only virtually. The storm, at least up in the northern part of the state, didn't affect traffic at all today, but I am aware there was a pretty significant accident in I-80 by Lambs Canyon. And I don't know what it's like down south, but I think it's anytime we can take advantage of an opportunity to provide increased safety for everyone, I think it's a good idea. And Kim Rathke's done a lot of work in preparing our meeting today and getting materials into the Nearpod, where we can have some interactive activities. So I encourage you to join that as we get started. This is also the time of year where, with the 45-day legislative session underway, where things can get my personal schedule at work here can get pretty disrupted. And so I want to acknowledge at the beginning of this meeting that I will not be able to stay for the duration of our meeting today. I've got some information at the beginning here that I'd like to go through and discuss, share with you, and then have opportunity for discussion. If there are questions that require my attention, I would ask that those be brought up at the end of my portion of today's meeting. But I'm confident that the rest of the content that our staff has prepared will be useful and valuable for each of you in your work to support the assessment in your local communities. And as always, we hope that to add value to your work. You'll see here the learning intentions that we have each meeting and our success criteria. Focused on, again, trying to support each of you in your roles with your LEAs. Thank you. Let's go to the next slide. Many of you probably are aware that Barbara Walters passed away recently. And that caused me, because I grew up with Barbara Walters being present on TV during the entirety of my life, that caused me to want to go in and try to understand more about her experiences and the way that she impacted her industry and career. She's quite remarkable in breaking down a lot of barriers for women in her industry. And I found this quote from her that resonates with me in my life individually, and also for the women that are in my life and the women that I've had the privilege of working with. So I wanted to share this quote with everyone this month, again, in honor of the passing of Barbara Walters and the significant role she played in breaking down a lot of barriers for those who would follow her into her industry. Let's go to the next slide. So again, one of the standing items, and this has come through from a request from this group, is we'll always have an update of what's coming up in a pending board meeting. This was in our last assessment directors meeting. We had anticipated having the Pearson contract amendment and the CAI contract amendment prepared for our board's consideration in January. There were some barriers that interfered with that, namely the requirement for us to go to sole source procurement, which required us to publish that contract amendment for other vendors to consider for a period of time. And then we can take the recommendations to our board in February. We are on track for that. And I wanted to share with this group what those contract amendments are. So let's start with Cambium. So you can have an idea of what we're asking the board to consider, changes related to both of these large-scale assessments. We've been talking in this group for some time about the need to advance the opportunity for students who are receiving their instructional in a remote setting to also be able to participate in required state assessments in a remote proctoring setting. So you'll see in both of these contract amendments efforts to do that. For Cambium, it involves creating additional summative test forms. And some of you may say, well, what do you mean test forms? Because these are adaptive tests. Test forms in this context is more about those adaptive forms than it is about obviously a fixed form. So with Cambium, we're going to be developing these test forms that are limited to those who will access them through remote testing. And we'll be, again, on track to be able to deliver those in the spring of 2024. We have work required to ensure that our state assessment systems meet industry standards. Cognitive labs around science is one of those things that we intend to do. Adjusting the timeline for ELA development. When the original contract was signed for this, we had anticipated being able to release that our board would adopt new English language arts standards earlier than what the timeline we're currently on. And so we've adjusted that to be responsive to the position we are right now with our ELA standards adoption. We're adjusting the compensation in our contracts. Our board recently created a participant support cost policy, which sets some clear parameters around the amount of compensation educators receive as they come in and do development work for the State Board of Education. And this extends far beyond assessment, but some of you may have already had educators in your communities that have participated in a way that this participant support cost policy affected them. So we're updating that for the increased compensation levels for those who come in and help us under this contract, and then some work around text-to-speech for ELA passage sets. For Pearson, again, we have the same goal of getting to a place where we can have remote testing. The first bullet here, though, talks about some improved LEA school and classroom level reporting. Since our contract was initiated with this partnership back in 2019, we have received feedback from many of you and some of your teachers about frustrations with reporting functionality that's not available through this system. And we've been working with Pearson for some period of time through the enhancement process. It's become clear that their current platform for test management will not, even with contract amendments, would not be able to accommodate that. They've been developing a test management platform called ADAM, and we are requesting the State Board of Education allow us to move to that test management platform, which then would meet our objective of being able to have a much improved reporting functionality for Utah Aspire Plus. That includes some additional work around for Utah, making sure that there are improvements to how LEAs monitor parental exclusion and other test participation codes, improve functionality for LEA submission and monitoring of accommodation request forms, and then, as I mentioned at the beginning, the remote summative assessment administration capabilities. Pearson's model for approaching this will be using a third-party application, so it won't function quite the same way that the CAI will, but it will still, our goal and objective is that they provide this opportunity for our LEAs to be able to deliver these summative assessments in a remote setting. And that, again, would be available in the spring of 2024. We need some additional science item development that we're requesting, work around our post-equating analysis. We have moved, as we've talked about earlier, to a pre-equating process for them for this assessment this year, which allows us to have reports, individual student reports, the ISRs, to students this spring for Utah Aspire Plus within 24 hours of them completing the test, which we've been striving for. That language is included in the original contract, but we needed to get to a place with delivery that we could move to post-equating. Work around our ELA standard revisions, and then adjusted compensation, just like with the CAI amendment, adjusted compensation around student or teachers coming in and helping us with item development and other activities. Last time we met, I asked for feedback around our upcoming Assessment and Accountability Policy Advisory Committee agenda. Sharing with you, there was a recommendation on that Jamboard that we share with the assessment directors pending decision points that APAC might be discussing. These 5 bullets represent the focus of this upcoming Accountability Policy Advisory Committee. One of these, the first bullet, is a move forward from our last APAC meeting where we ran out of time and weren't able to address this issue. Rounding decisions with school accountability. Our TSA identification with EL-related measures. So again, mathematics, ELA, and science. We've talked previously in APAC about WIDA, and in our most recent submission for ESSA, a plan amendment request. And we're making recommendations or requests to change that. This is more related to how we deal with TSI identification on those other content areas. Calculation and display of student attendance rates on the school report card. This one came from the feedback that you provided last month, as well as we'll have a review of the way that student growth percentiles are calculated between the two different assessment platforms. Dr. Scott Marion will be prepared to share with APAC the methodology of that and the soundness, and also obviously any risk associated with that. So again, I want to thank you for taking time last time we met to submit potential agenda items, and look forward to meeting with our Assessment Accountability Policy Advisory Committee on January 25th, being an in-person meeting here at the State Board of Education. So that concludes my portion of the agenda, but before I end, I'm going to pause for 10 or 20 seconds to see if there are questions for me, either about any of these items that I've covered briefly, or other items that you might have questions for me.
Darren, just a question real quick. How long is the state contracted with Pearson for Aspire Plus?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Kendra, for that question. The contract was a 5+5. We signed it in 2018, with 19 being the first year of administration. 5+5 means really a 10-year contract. The first 5, and then it can be renewed. One of the advantages of that has been that we've protected the board from inflationary costs related to statewide assessments, especially over this last year and a half. That's been very advantageous financially. The board can terminate a contract. Any of our contracts, not just assessment, has a provision that the board can terminate contracts without cause. And there's usually controls like notice, the amount of notice that needs to be provided. So we have 2018, so that'd be 2028. I don't have the contract up in front of me, Kendra, but I believe it's 2028 is when that contract would expire.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Well, I will conclude my time then. And Kim, I believe you are up next.
Yes, we have some, it's that time of the year where we start to have a little bit of assessment reminders. And so both Sydney and I are going to be sharing some information with you. We have some new assessment directors, and this is a new resource that we provided for you this year, the Assessment Accountability Task Calendar. And I just wanted to remind you that that link is on our USBE Assessment Director resource page so that you can find it. There's a few little lists of things that are coming up that you may just want to be aware of. We are going to be starting assessment observations. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute, but there are several things that you just might want to look through and make sure that you're on track, particularly if you're new and this is a new, or you have lots of new staff in your offices, which many of you actually do. And so also the Assessment Director Resource Guide provides you with all the dates of all the testing windows. For those of you who are kind of like, wait, what dates? When do the windows actually open? And a lot of that information is provided there. Because we've heard about this, I mean, this is my 9th year at USBE. I worked really hard with our staff to present you with the 2023-2024 dates in January so that you guys can start your planning, so you know when the actual assessment dates are going to be for next year. And that link is a link to the actual calendar. It's just a link to the list. The resource guide will be updated. Some of the things that go on our actual AD resource guide are links that have to go to things that the board will be deciding in the next couple months. But these are the actual dates when the assessments will happen next year. The state testing windows for 2024, Melanie, these are the dates for 2024. for each of the testing platforms. 2023, 2024 are the dates. So there you go. And there they are. You can click on that link. It should link right to a page. I'm also going to attach this page to our next couple of AD meetings until we can get everything updated for the resource guide. This is the actual one pager that goes on there that is attached to the AD resource guide. So now you have the dates and you have them in January. So I would just like to thank everybody in the assessment accountability staff. We worked really hard with our vendors to get those actual dates, and Emily, of course, for putting this all together. This is an observation assessment year. We will be conducting assessment observations during the spring summative window. We have schools. This is just the general slide. I'm going to click to the next one. Just so you know, if we don't hear from you by within the areas, and we're doing the Q's region this year, we don't hear from you by between February 20th to 24th, we will be sending out some emails to you and suggesting schools. This year for our observations, particularly, last year we emphasized science. We are continuing to do math, ELA, and science this year, all of our assessments. And we would like to ask for some schools that we know will have students who will be using the new Spanish Transadaptive feature in the RISE summative test for math and or science, as well as any English learners who also are using accommodations. As you start to reach out to your schools, one of the areas that we particularly need to answer for our federal peer review are how we are providing accommodated forms, supports for students who are English learners, as well as our special education students who are special ed. And we're particularly, it's not just for Utah Aspire Plus, it's not just extended time. I know Tracy would like to observe, and so would Jessica, some students who are using the assistive technologies that are outside of the Universal Design for Learning frameworks. When we send these off, we'll send that reminder as well. But we wanted to, as you're starting to reach out to schools, if you could arrange to find some of the teachers that we could be willing to observe. Just for those of you who've never done this with us before, we're pretty unobtrusive. We just sneak it into the back. We're not trying to do anything. We try not to interrupt or disrupt testing in any way. And because some of our regions, we may have to travel a little bit this year, we may ask you to adjust some dates after you send them to us. So this year, we are going to be observing WIDA, RISE, Utah Aspire Plus, and DLM for this testing season. I put the link to the assessment observation plan for those of you who are wondering exactly what we do with that. We will be doing Q's this year, so it's Juab, North Sanpete, Paiute, Sevier, South Sanpete, Tintic, Wayne, and any charter schools that are located within the Q's region. Additionally, as part of our plan, as our federally approved plan, 25% of the schools we sometimes select outside of that region for additional observation support, sometimes from most of the time it's just to provide some additional support based on emails that we're receiving. Some schools are struggling a little bit, particularly schools that have lots of new staff. And so those may be some schools, and those will be identified individually, and we'll let you know who they are. You are always, as assessment directors, invited to join us on any of our observation visits. We usually have a pretty good time. Last year, Brett can tell you, Brett will let you know, we had a good time up in Wasatch School District last year, same with Drew, when we were in Park City. And so it's a really good way for you to come and actually see what's happening in your schools. What I'm asking you for is for you to reach out to your schools to find out when exactly within the testing, the RISE, Utah Aspire Plus, WIDA testing windows, when people are doing their actual testing. We're not as concerned about this content this year as we are about observing the new Spanish Transadaptive for RISE, and of course in Utah Aspire Plus. The assessment observation windows, this is the actual testing window for most of the tests, although we're ending May 12th for all of our observations. So we have a cutoff deadline because of other things that we have to do in our office. So February is the main time when we're doing WIDA testing. So that would be something that we would need that information from you as soon as possible. I gave February 20th as the deadline, but if you're doing WIDA testing, I know Megan and Anne Michelle need to schedule some testing, and so we would love for you to reach out to us as soon as possible. The DLM window, the UA Plus window, the RISE window are pretty examples right there. On our USBE website as well, if you're curious about what surveys or the questions that we ask, they are also posted. We just updated it with a couple more questions that we needed for our English learners and our special ed population based on some feedback we got on peer review. So they are not completely current. I think Emily fixed them 2 days ago, and it usually takes a couple days for our web management team to get those located, but they'll be there. So, and so that's our main thing. Diana has a question. Did you say standard level reporting would be available in Aspire Plus this year? There is no standard level of level reporting in Utah Aspire Plus. What will be available this year for the very first time is on-demand reports within 24 to 48 hours of all the tests. So there is no standard level reporting. It is something that possibly can be discussed, but if you remember, Utah Aspire Plus is designed as a grade level test, end of grade level test, not a course-based test. So standards level reporting is somewhat problematic with that test, especially with the predictive ACT score. Okay, Sydney.
Yeah, thank you. We are very excited to announce that we've created some resources. One of the elements from the Strategic Assessment Plan group was that we create some resources that would be available for educators to become more assessment literate. And so we've spent some time designing and creating these modules for you to help provide some assessment literacy training to the educators in your LEAs. So you can see the list on the column on the right of the 10 different modules that we've created and the titles of those modules. You'll know the elements that we'd be discussing within each of those modules. Each of the modules is designed to take about 60 to 75 minutes. So as we were considering these, originally we had looked at 30 to 45 minutes for each module, and there's too much information. And so we wanted to make sure we were including the information that would be necessary. So as you're looking at using these resources, it could be something that you might split up a module in a PLC group or a team meeting, and they might do half of the module one time and the other half another time, or complete a whole module in a single sitting. Each module also includes a reflection journal that is there to help the participant record their learning and engage in the module and some activities as they're going through each of the modules. We've created this two different ways. The first way is that the modules can be facilitated if you're doing like a staff meeting at your school. It could be facilitated by a coach or a principal at the school. Those facilitated modules are designed to be interactive. They include prompts and activities and discussion for a facilitator to lead a group through. The facilitated modules also include a facilitator guide that helps the facilitator to know what they're saying for each slide and what they would need to prepare for each module as they prepare to present those modules. The second way that the modules are available is through an independent learning through Canvas. So if you have a teacher that's looking at individually going through the modules, those are also available in Canvas for somebody to work through independently. So one other thing on that slide, the participants the order of the modules is 1 through 7 needs to pretty much be given in that order. And then starting with modules 8 through 10, they can be shuffled anytime after modules 1 through 7 are done. You can do them in the order that they're presented, but 8, 9, and 10 can be adjusted if you have different needs at your school. Okay, so on the next slide, we talk a little bit about one of the ways that we decided to make these resources available to you was to work through a facilitated version of the modules so that you're able to see what's available and be able to present these to the people in your LEAs. So we've decided to provide some webinars to walk through each of these modules with assessment directors and other district level staff that may be interested, to let you know what's available and help walk you through what's there so that you're able to share that with the other people in your LEA. So the first sessions for these modules, you can register in Midas. You can see the course number there. On Thursday, February 9th, we'll be walking through modules 1 and 2. We've listed here an hour and a half for this webinar. we won't be going through each of the activities in full, but more walking through what's available in each of those modules. So it's more of a slightly to train the trainer, but more of a heads up, here's what's available. So we'll start with modules 1 and 2 on Thursday, February 9th. And then the next modules 3 and 4 will be walking through that in a webinar on Thursday, March 2nd. In the Midas course, you'll be able to see the rest of the times. There are 5 different sessions. We'll be going through 2 modules at each of these sessions. And we'll also send out any reminders about these dates in the AD memos for those weeks. So the resources will be available in Canvas for both the facilitators and for the independent learning. So the facilitators Canvas course will include slide decks and the facilitator guides, as well as the participant learning notebook resources. And then the Canvas course for the independent learning is just all a person would go through like they would a typical Canvas course. Modules 1 through 3 will go live on February 10th. So these links will take you to the Canvas course, but they won't be live until February 10th when those modules go live. And they'll be available, like I mentioned, for both the facilitated version and the independent learning. I see there's a few questions and it looks like Kim may be answering them in the chat, but if there's any other questions on the assessment literacy modules, one thing just to note again, these are the modules are for teachers and they're for any teacher. There may be some more basic learning in there about some of the differences between summative, informative, interim, that kind of assessment, but it's probably a good resource for any educator that would need to become more assessment literate. Some of our assessment directors have a lot of this information already. That's why as we were looking at presenting these webinars to you, we probably won't be going into a whole lot of depth because many of you have this information already. If you're a new AD or someone that would like to buff up on your assessment literacy knowledge, attending or maybe even walking through the independent learning yourself would probably be a great idea. And then any other questions, please reach out.
Hi, Carolyn asked if we were going to offer the informational webinars again after the testing windows are over. We hadn't planned on doing that because the courses will already be live. These are basically just jump in, come watch to see kind of what is covered in the information. And then the teachers and Canvas people were doing that. There really isn't enough time to go through and do informational webinars again because the courses will already be live. But you know, and we're not recording them because they're really just very high level and informational, like this is what is going to be in this course and this is kind of what the teachers would be doing. And that's basically what these webinars are. They're very informational. They're not, this is how you do the, you know, this is not what the course is. But we're happy to discuss it. We can take it back and discuss that internally if we're going to do more. But after the testing windows are over, that would be June. And by then our plan was to have them all launched so that LEAs could use them in the summer for training and provide them to their staff. So, but feel free, you know, like I said, we can talk about that if you're interested, but the meetings should be pretty quick. I mean, they're 90 minutes to cover a couple modules. So remember when we talk about that, this is not the actual module that you'll be filling out reflections or anything like that.
And then like Kim mentioned with the assessment literacy modules, we'll have them available in Canvas as well as the facilitators and the independent version. If you're interested in providing PD at a location and would like some support from our staff who created these modules, we'd be happy to talk with you about that as well. So feel free to reach out if you have other questions. And we're excited to get these resources out to you.
Okay, before Megan gets started, we're about to hit the point where we're going to be having some collaboration boards as soon as the WIDA slides are over. And right now we have 120 people in our webinar and only 61 people in the Nearpod. So if you were planning on joining us, now would be a really good time to probably link in and get into Nearpod so that you're ready when the collaboration starts.
All right. Yes, definitely join in Nearpod because it's important that your voice is heard. All right. Good morning and happy access testing. We are in it. So hopefully, as everyone was getting back from our long winter breaks, hopefully they were long, or felt long, you should have started receiving your materials from WIDA and DRC. So we are in our testing window. Please remember that you can test during the entire window. The most important thing is that you take advantage of the entire window to get those students tested. So please just make sure if you have any questions during the testing window, reach out to myself and Michelle Neal, but I would also encourage you to reach directly out to WIDA, especially to DRC. Their customer service is amazing. A lot of times they'll be able to help you even faster than I could or Ann Michelle, because they have better access in AMS to everything, even above the state. So also, please take note that you can order additional materials. That window is open. One of the most common questions that I do get is, when I placed an order, it didn't work. You do need to be under the additional materials tab in AMS. The initial materials order window that closed. So we are now in the additional materials ordering window. You do not need to wait to ship any materials back. As soon as you are done, you can start shipping them back. Even if it's like, hey, we only have one box ready to ship back. DRC loves getting things early. As soon as our testing window opens, they begin scoring, and so getting materials back, it helps to not delay any scoring as well. All right, next slide.
There's a question for you in the chat, Megan.
Okay, Ron, thank you for letting us know. This would be a good question. I don't know if Maureen is on right now. I assume she is. We will need to double check what happened in the upload this year. Two things could have happened in our upload. And the first thing is, did your LEA upload your SIS? USBE does not have access to your SIS, and so we cannot update your SIS based on last year's access scores. That is the responsibility of the LEAs to make sure that you have the most updated information and make sure that you have the most current level. It looks like Marina is out of the office, so I can double check with her. I know that we did double check when we did the upload to only pull students that had a composite of a 4.9 or lower. If something went awry with that, we can double check it to see why that happened, but we can put in a query to find out. Thank you for letting us know that this happened. We will definitely look into it. All right. Again, this should be familiar. The no zeros. Yay. I just love that everyone celebrated. When you do have to make changes to your rosters in AMS and students, when you need to add students, you no longer need to add the 3 preceding zeros to the SSID. So that was always a happy one. Again, just a reminder on materials, especially for grades 1 through 3 writing. As soon as those tests are done, that domain is done, pack them up, ship them back. And that way they can start being graded and scored. So there will be no delays. And just based on this kind of crazy weather and winter we've had, I think the sooner we can get materials back, knowing that there's probably going to be shipping delays, the better. So just start packing those up as soon as those are done and send them back. And then as Kim and I have been just blowing up your email with, and we definitely talked about this in the last AD meeting, we do have the script to add to testing. It's a very short couple of sentences to read to students before they take the access test. So Amy did attach the script again. You can access it on the link in the slides as well. If you need it and you just can't seem to find it, email myself and Michelle or Kim. And again, this is to really make sure that we are preventing any kind of plagiarism, but also that students understand the purpose for testing. So we are going to continue to look at it. I will say the last report I got, we have 0 instances of plagiarism in Utah right now. So that is a great start. Thank you for helping us in this endeavor. We know that, you know, things will happen, but we're hoping to really mitigate it. And this script is one of those ways. Also just really, really good TA monitoring during testing. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, let us know. And then finally, we have the field test. This is going to be coming up. So the alternate access field tests, so excited for. Again, with the alternate access, we are going to be able to get an updated alternate access, as well as they are going to do new standard setting with this. So the scores, the proficiency levels will align with regular access of a 1 through 6 level. And also, we will finally get from this an alternate screener. So we are asking and requesting very kindly, please make sure that you are participating in this. Not every LEA will get alternate access field test materials. So only about, I would say half of you should expect to get materials. And those materials are going to be sent through UPS. You should expect to see those by February 7th. Okay. Please note that everything alternate access field test will have the can-do dog on it. So that is going to be how you can identify, is this field test? Look for that can-do dog. And please know that you do not need to order additional materials. Just do what you get, please, and do not worry about ordering additional materials. You will also be getting, sorry, I'm trying to think of everything that we needed to cover with this. For your contacts, your shipping contacts in AMS, you will be the ones receiving an email with the shipping information, that tracking information for the alternate access field test materials. And please note that that alternate access field test, the window, it goes into April. So you have a lot of time to get it done. If you're worried about testing fatigue, get access done first and foremost. Give it a while, then get the alternate field test done. So I see we have some comments and questions. We really need something in between the current alt and access. Teralyn, if you have any thoughts that are very specific.
So Megan, so I'll jump in on that one. So back in the day, Teralyn, they used to do what was called a 2% sort of type students, right? So it kind of rolls the same as what goes on with our regular assessments. We don't do kind of an in-between test for any students. They take a regular test or they qualify as a student with a significant cognitive disability to take an alternate test. So unfortunately, that's just the way those rules operate, but we do hear that quite a bit. And then Virginia, you had jumped in and asked, what do we do if we get field test materials and one of our alt students is unavailable? What should we do? If you are not able, if the student's not available to take the field test, then just don't worry about it. Megan, I don't know if they want the material shipped back if they don't use them.
Yep.
So just ship them back. We are just trying to gather a sampling. So if you have field test materials that show up, you have students with the ability and availability to participate in that field test after the regular test, please do so that we can get this done and wrapped up and not have to come back next year with the same ask. But if you've got a student that it's taken you everything you've had to get through that regular access test, I understand that. But hopefully you have a couple students that you can at least get that administered to. If you don't, just don't stress over it.
Right.
And Carolyn, we just have a handful of 1% students at top of the alt, but can't access. So I don't know how else to there will not be another assessment developed for those kiddos. That's just not the way that the regulations are outlined. So we just do the best that we can. If those students, if they are not identified as alternate assessment participants, then they have to participate in the regular assessment, and we do the best that we can to accommodate those students. So if you have a specific use case, Carolyn, that you want to reach out to myself and Michelle and Megan, and we can talk through and navigate maybe how to help you, we can do that.
Right. And I know that as Tracy is speaking to this, one, it's not, it may not apply here, but again, if any of you have specific instances where this is an issue, the paper version of the regular access is absolutely available for students that need it and require it. And we can provide more guidance on how can you create a testing situation for a student that may, that's right in that in between of taking the paper access in a one-on-one test administration situation with accommodations and everything. And we have seen some success with that. But again, let us know what your unique situations are. And we as a team can kind of try to come up with guidance or provide guidance that we already have available for those unique situations. And then I see Christine. So the script needs to be read for all WIDA testing. Yes, please. So at the beginning of each access test, so at the beginning of each domain, they need that reminder. And then I think, did we answer all the questions in the chat? Looks like it. Again, just reach out to us. You know that we're more than happy to help. We're here. And then as Kim said, we hope to, weather permitting, get out and do some observations. So hopefully we'll be able to see you soon. And also if you ever are in a situation where you're not up for observations, but you're like, I would really love someone here to help. This is our first go at it. Let us know, and we can always come out to do observations and be a thought partner in this fun testing world. So contact information. Thank you.
Megan, I have one more ask. If you have students, if you have any students that are taking Braille in WIDA this year, will you please send us an email so we are interested in coming to observe that and see what the WIDA Braille looks like? So we've been working really hard with them around what's going on with Braille between the screener and access. So if we can come observe that, if you have that going, please let us know. Thanks.
Just as Teresa and Jared are getting ready, we've had a couple emails from people who are saying the Nearpod link is invalid. It appears that it's on your end because we're able to access just fine. You may need to clear your browsing history and then try the link again. So Amy will put the link in one more. We'll put the link in again, but for sure, Teresa and Jared both have some information that they need from you. So you may want to go ahead and try that one more time, and let's see if that works for those of you who've reached out to us, and we appreciate that.
Another idea is, if that link isn't working that's being put in the chat, just do a Google search for Nearpod login. And it'll let you join a session that way. And then just enter in the code that's displayed on the screen right here, 35Q97. You can try to log in that way as well.
Okay, just a reminder, we do have a couple of more professional learning sessions coming up for both administrators and teachers to really focus on your middle of year Acadience data. And then there are a couple of reading self-directed Canvas courses that you can have teachers use when they can't attend the training, to really go in and dive into their Acadience middle of year data and use that to inform their instruction. Next slide. So our beginning of year Acadience data is available for both reading and numeracy. So there were links included in the email that was sent out this morning, and then there will also be links that you can access through the Nearpod. So the data is broken into demographic groups and grade levels, so you can compare your data with other LEAs across the state, and then there is available for a 3-year period. So it does have that 3-year data for both literacy, and numeracy, I believe has 2 years now, because we've had that data for 2 years. So next slide. You can, yes.
It's just 1 year we've provided. That's all we have
Okay.
at the moment. So
Didn't include last year's. Okay. I hadn't looked at the math data. So sorting the data, you can sort the data by column. Just click on the little arrow next to each heading, and that creates a pivot sheet and easily allows you to sort data to find just your school or to compare your school to other schools. You can sort it by grade level or specific demographic group, and it just provides that information. Can you freeze row 1 of the sheets that were shared so we can see the headers? Yes. We can go in and do that. If you have not made a copy yet, we can go in and freeze that. But if you've made a copy of it, then you won't be able to our changing that won't make a difference at all. So I don't know. I don't remember how to freeze the header column. I know there's a way. I usually just go look it up when I need it. Does anybody know how to freeze that first row just off the top of your head?
I think it's under view. I'm not looking at Excel right now, but I think it's under view. And then you can go to freeze rows or columns. And then there's an option right there that says freeze row 1 or freeze top row.
Thank you, Emily. I was going to know the answer.
You can also, like, in the top left, there's a little gray mark and you can pull it down and it'll freeze it. Just really quickly.
Thank you.
I don't know if that makes sense. But.
For Acadience reading data, that's what we're going to look at first. You can see the links there. Like I said, you can access them through the Nearpod, or they were in the email that was sent out this morning from Amy. Take a few minutes, review your LEA's data. As you review it, think about, what do you notice about the data? Who else would benefit from reviewing this? If you have time, you can compare your data to LEAs with a similar demographic or the state. So there's the 2 links right there. So we're going to take 3 to 5 minutes for you to just take a look at your data and see where you are at this year compared to previous years. What is the difference between the first 5 rows in each LEA?
It's the grade levels.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm pretty sure it's a grade level.
So if you look at
Look, there should be a grade level column. Okay, we're going to go ahead and just jump into a collaboration board on the Nearpod. So thinking about those questions, how could this data inform your LEA? Who else would benefit from reviewing this data? What are your thoughts about sharing this data? How are you going to utilize that and use it to inform decisions and instruction at your district or charter. So if you could just share some thoughts in the provided space. If you agree with somebody else, you can always click on the little heart button in the comments. Thank you to those who are posting. It's, I think, really valuable, especially for our new assessment directors, to see how those who are more seasoned and experienced are utilizing this data and incorporating it to really inform instruction and impact instruction within their individual schools. Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on and take a look at math data. Jared, you might be frozen.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we're good.
All right, I tend to freeze. Yeah, let's take a few minutes and just look at the math data. Kim, do you mind setting that timer again? Thank you. Okay, thanks, Kim. So here, there we go. So, share one thing you noticed or wondered about while you reviewed your literacy and numeracy or numeracy Acadience data. What's something you noticed or you wondered about? Throw that in the Collaborate board. Something I wondered about is just making sure next time we provide the data that we have multiple years, since we have been doing this couple years now for Acadience Math. Thank you for sharing that about demographics. Yeah, I think digging into it a little bit further is always helpful to see specific challenges students might be facing. Thank you. Excellent points or observations made. And yeah, with that, I think, oh, there we go. Keep them coming. And also, if any questions arise or need for training or other things, please feel free to reach out to Teresa for Acadience Reading or myself for Acadience Math. Question about third grade data. Mandy, are you looking at the reading or the math? Let me hop in and check it out. Kim, I think we're good to move on if you'd like, and I can respond to Mandy as I look it up.
Hey, just a couple of things around KEEP and PEEP assessments. There has been some updated guidance around question 7 for the KEEP exit writing question. I've gotten a number of questions last year just about exactly how do we grade this, because there weren't really very good examples regarding those different scenarios. So I've added in some additional examples and additional guidance around that. So please make sure this gets out to your kindergarten teachers so that they have that additional guidance. It is also posted on our USBE website under the KEEP assessment. And so that's an updated version that has those additional examples. So just get that out to your kindergarten teachers before the KEEP exit this spring. And then also just a reminder that the KEEP and PEEP cut scores are also available on our USBE website. And there are links here as well to provide some additional information to your kindergarten and preschool teachers about where those cut scores actually lie, and just help them to make better instructional decisions for their students. So just putting those out there to get those out to your kindergarten and preschool teachers. Okay, I will double check that.
Sorry to interrupt, just so you're aware that KEEP cut scores link is broken.
Okay, it is available on the USBE website under the KEEP assessment and then the PEEP assessment, those cut score documents. But I will drop in the chat the correct link for that. I don't know why it didn't work. Sorry.
Thanks so much.
All right, good morning. Couple of things as we wrap up Apple testing. Go ahead and go to the next slide.
Before we move on, Brad has a question about KEEP.
Do you want to speak to that, Sid? It's what are they doing with KEEP next year? I don't believe a decision's been made yet.
No, I know we asked everybody for their feedback, but that has not been changed yet. So we delivered the feedback from both our assessment directors and the literacy directors on the want to switch to Acadience. From the majority of people, we gave the specific feedback and the numbers to the board team that is looking at consolidating reporting and things like that, and that was one of their requests, but no decisions have been made yet. They haven't talked further about that. So as of right now, the plan is to continue with KEEP and PEEP testing in the board required timelines. PEEP would be for those that are participating in the grant or want to participate in the grants, but no changes at this time. But we'll keep you updated if there's been any more discussion and any outcomes of that discussion for sure.
Great question as we're discussing that, because that, has been out there. So.
Okay. This information is updated on the assessment list for the upcoming year as well, but for your calendaring, the fall window for the Apple administration for 2023 has been determined and set. So our general window will begin October 16th and run through December 1st.
with those UR makeups following the next week. And then all rating reviews will be required to be submitted no later than December 15th. And just remember with those rating reviews that 10 business days are what we need to have to give LTI enough time to get those rating reviews completed. So plan accordingly when you are working with your schools and having them set their windows, that if they want time to be able to retest the URs, those rating reviews need to be submitted more than 10 days prior. So there is still time for students to retest following. And because our window falls in the fall, we need to remember to pay close attention to the fact that Thanksgiving break is in there as well. And those would not count in your business days as LTI is not working during those few days either. So just a few things to be aware of. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Last year, we had a collaborate board at the end of our testing window just to allow you to reflect on testing practices and anything that we could do to be helpful to you for the following year. And this is actually where the feedback was taken to include a piece in the Apple training about avoiding UR ratings. And so I thought it would be beneficial for all of us this year to do the same. So if you'll take a few minutes to share any information or feedback that helps your LEA successfully administer the Apple test, or if you have any suggestions for next year, that would be super helpful. So just take a few minutes and fill that out. If somebody suggests something that you agree with, go ahead and click the little heart button so that we know that that's something that there are multiple LEAs who have that same idea. Glad to hear that testing went really well. That makes me happy. It went very well on our end as well. So we feel that, that things went well for us too. That's great to hear. Thank you for that rescore feedback. That's good to hear as well. For those of you where testing went well, if there was something specific that you feel helped foster that, that would be great to know as well. Maybe for those schools where maybe it didn't go as well, so they can kind of take the feather from your cap and implement some of those practices. If you've got some suggestions, we're happy to entertain those on this board too. Oh, that's great. That's a great idea to put dividers with the microphones. I can see that being something that would be helpful. All right, so for UTIPs, there's just a couple of things to be aware of. First, we have an enhancement that goes live today based on some feedback that we received from some users. It was determined that it would be really helpful to have a mass delete option for old data. So that has been implemented now, and to delete student results from any assessment, there is the option to click a checkbox next to their name and then hit a delete option up at the top. You can also click the button that's just above all of the check marks to do like a select all, and that will remove the data from that particular assessment in UTIPS, which is really nice and handy. So you can share that with any of your UTIPS users. I will also be sharing this with the user that made the suggestion to begin with, which is really helpful. But another plug for that, if there are things that would be helpful with UTIPS, I'm happy to work with our developers to see what we can get implemented for you to make it more user friendly. And so this is just one of those examples that we were able to take a suggestion from one of our users and make it a reality for that user. Go ahead and go to the next slide. As a reminder with UTIPS though, When you have a semester or trimester course change, the UTIPS is unavailable for those first about 48 to 72 hours as the syncs with UTREX are catching up. So just kind of be aware of that, as we've had some emails over the last couple of days asking where courses are. And with the switching of semesters and trimesters over the last couple of weeks, that's really what has been the catalyst in those courses being missing, that they're not necessarily missing, they just haven't been able to sync yet. So give them a couple of days. But if they're still not there, please, yes, reach out so that we can check things on our end to make sure that things are going well. For RISE, just a reminder for the testing windows for the upcoming spring administration. As a friendly reminder, please set your testing windows so that the tests aren't administered in error. That sometimes tends to be something that we see here in the early spring because the windows weren't set for the winter or spring summative administration or the interim window for winter. So go ahead and just double check those that you've got them so that those summative tests aren't administered in error. There will be a training for our spring administration that's coming up, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Oh, you're totally fine, Kim. Keep going. You're good. The Spanish Transadaptive testing question. Someone came off mute. We're good. Okay. Spanish Transadaptive testing will be available on math and science for this spring administration. And as Kim mentioned, that is something that we are really interested in observing. So for those schools who would be possibly implementing that, please let us know, because we would love to see that in action. The training tests are currently being updated to reflect that functionality, and we will let you know when that is available so that you can let your schools know so that students can begin practicing with that and see how that goes. At this time, though, Spanish versions will not be provided for benchmark modules or interim assessments. So for our training, as I mentioned before, that will be in just a few weeks, Wednesday, February 15th from 1 to 3. You can register in Midas. If the time doesn't work for you, it will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. And I will also include the link in the upcoming AD memo that follows the training so that you have access to that if you need it. And then we are on to Utah Aspire Plus, I believe.
Brad has a question for you.
Oh, I'm looking at the chat. Has USBE considered doing a short screencast video on how to use the Transadaptive feature? That's a great idea, Brad. We can definitely look into that. So for Utah Aspire Plus, a few things to be aware of with the schedule of events. First of all, many of you attended our training yesterday, which is great, and we appreciate your feedback and your participation there. For those of you who were unable to, it has been recorded, and I will get the link for that in the upcoming AD memo that goes out next week. For scheduling of events, accounts should be finalized. You should be getting those all ready to go. Infrastructure trials completed by the end of February. Just make sure that your student devices are ready to go so that when it comes time to verify student enrollment, you can do that also at the end of February. And any of those session management tasks you'll want to have done beginning of March, just before your or just before you start your windows so that those are ready to go. As a reminder, you won't want to start any of your sessions though, so that if there are any enrollment changes or transfer students, that can still flow easily through the UTREX submission rather than doing manual transfers. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Some prep tools to be aware of. Just remember that for students, there's the question samplers and the TestNav tutorial that are available. The really nice thing about the TestNav tutorial is it will familiarize students with the tools that are provided within TestNav, similar to the RISE training test. It really lets the students practice in an unobtrusive space where it's really low stakes and they can get a feel for what's provided for them as far as helping them through. The Brown training site is also a great option for those of you who are creating sessions or preparing sessions. If it's something that you're not familiar with, you can use that to practice all of those things without messing any of your rosters or data up that are live in the Blue site. Again, that training that was held has been recorded. Another thing to be aware of with Utah Aspire Plus, February 13th is the day that it will open for your accommodated forms. So if you're trying to submit those, just know that it's not available yet, but those will be, that option becomes available and live through Pearson Access Next on February 13th. Do you have any questions about Utah Aspire Plus or RISE, Apple, UTIPS, any of those things? Okay.
Then we get to move to ACT updates. And if you don't recognize me, it's because I'm wearing glasses. So it's my Superman disguise is working. Hopefully you didn't recognize me.
At least you have one question.
Yep. The trial guide be active on Pearson, Elise.
Am I not seeing it?
I got it in the chat.
That's really weird. The last one I see is still the one from Brad. You want to read it to me?
So when will the infrastructure trial guide be active on Pearson?
Oh, that's a great question. I will reach out to Pearson and ask, because I know that they have their little, it's coming soon there, but that it hasn't been posted. I can definitely check on that.
Cool. So did you miss the January 10th training earlier? Not a problem. It's on our YouTube channel. You can check it out. We covered accommodations, mock testing, and how to assign school facilitators. And so please feel free to check that out. January 20th, tomorrow, you're supposed to have and verify your enrollment. And so this is needed for paper and online testing because they are going to send you materials from ACT, even online testing. They're going to send you the test administration manuals and things that you need for that. And so this enrollment determines that. It also verifies your shipping address. So if you go in there to verify and your shipping address is wrong, please make sure you get the correct shipping address in there. If after the 20th changes happen, because we know students have this tendency of not wanting to stay put and move when their families move, weird. All you have to do is submit a request to ACT to enroll or unenroll, and it's pretty easy to do. But we have the enrollment here in the Pearson Access Next user guide linked, so you can just click that link and you're welcome to go check that out. It's pretty easy step-by-step instructions on that. If you missed yesterday's webinar, ACT did record it. They did say that on our schedule of events, there is going to be a link for yesterday's webinar. There's an upcoming webinar also, webinar number 2, February 16th. You can register on the schedule of events for the ACT training webinar. You can get an hour of relicensure credit. We have a Midas course set up for this. And if you don't want an hour, you can still, and you don't want to register with ACT, you can go incognito and just join us on the Zoom link, because we're going to be putting this on a USB Zoom link, and we're going to record it and make sure that that is also available on our YouTube channel. And so this is for test coordinators, so school level coordinators. So that gives them an overview how to have a successful test day. So anything about administering the ACT, including receiving and returning materials. And so sometimes you need to return materials, other times you can secure destroy those, and it'll give you all that information that you need for that. Shmoop news moving forward. There is a Shmoop.
I have a question in the chat, Scott.
Cool. Is there a deadline for add and delete? Not that I'm aware of, until the shipping date. And so I'm guessing it's before the shipping date you want to do any add deletes, because once it ships, it's shipped. And after that, I would assume you'd have to also go in and do an add delete to get additional materials sent out to you on time if you have a new student that moved in real quick. So Shmoop has an ACT prep webinar going on. They sent us some stuff this past week. Hopefully we were able to get some of that information. We've had a lot of success with schools that are using Shmoop, especially in terms of helping bring up scores for students. And so there's a registration link there. If you're not able to attend on February 3rd for this, you can still register and then have that recording sent to you. And so if I remember right, I believe this is at 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon. So it's at a later time. So it's available to everyone. If you have any questions about SMOOP, they are very responsive. They're very helpful. Autumn Ackerman is our program manager here for Utah, and she is very quick and very helpful with anything that you need. And so to please take advantage of SMOOP. Remember, it's something the state pays for. Every student from grade 8 and above gets free access to SMOOP. Every teacher, grade 8 and above, every administrator in a school that has grade 8 and above gets free access to SMOOP. And if you're not, you can go on their website and see about getting that access, or just contact them, because sometimes districts have different ways that they want you to access that, but it's free and they're very helpful. So take advantage of it if you can. We got a little thing here that was sent from us. Thank you, Wendy Graham from Ogden School District. Nice little synopsis of steps that they use in their schools when administering the ACT. And so it's a nice short 2-pager, which means it fits on one sheet of paper. And so it's easy to print. And so take a look at it, see if it's something that might help you out. If it helps you out, fantastic. Use it, adapt it. Don't use it. It's just something that was made available to us from Wendy. So thank you, Wendy, because you are awesome. And we all know it. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And so we had a request at the training that we did. We talked about at the beginning. We had a request for anyone who's successfully administered the ACT online. And so if you know anyone at your school that really rocks at administering the ACT online, we'd like to have them join with us to put together some professional learning for school level facilitators that will help them know what to do and what to avoid when it comes to administering the ACT online. So just contact me directly at my email if you have someone who would love to collaborate with us on this. And we'd like to get this together sooner than later, something within the next 2-3 weeks, to be able to put together a webinar and put it out there and let y'all know about it through the ACT listserv and through our AD memos. And so something we could put together, it'd be nice if someone could join us with that, because frankly, I haven't. I've just started doing ACT, and when I go and look at my school, which is USBE, we don't have any students here at my school. So it's kind of hard to administer tests with no students. And that will do it for me. And we'll turn the time over to Jessica for some accommodations and accessibility information.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Okay. So one more final push. I'll just go through this quickly, since tomorrow is the deadline for submitting your initial request for ACT accommodations for any student who has an IEP, a 504, or an English learner. Or, as we discussed in our last ACT training, if a student has a health service plan that requires them to use a phone to monitor a condition like diabetes, and they'll need to use that on the day of the exam, you will want to make a request for that. Tomorrow is the deadline. Here, if you still have not completed these tasks, here are your best resources to utilize. There's an on-demand training that was completed last fall. ACT has their accessibility supports guide, which outlines all accommodations, whether it's a universal tool or embedded support, or whether you need to request it from ACT. And then the TAA user guide is really your step-by-step guide on how to enter accommodations and troubleshoot for the TAA. And then if you have some English learners and you haven't submitted accommodations, there's just some guidance on what ACT is looking for when you make a submission. It is important, if you have not checked the TAA for your decision notifications on whether your accommodations were approved or not, I would really encourage you to do so today to see if there's any outliers of things that did not get approved that you need to follow up with today or tomorrow. If there is an accommodation that was denied, there is another window for ACT that closes on January 27th, the requesting reconsideration window. This window is only if you submitted your initial request. It is not if you missed the initial deadline. So if you submitted a request, or if you entered an accommodation wrong, like maybe it was already approved from ACT, but you yourself as an LEA realized, oh, you know what, that's not the accommodation I meant to ask for, then you can use this window to request reconsideration, and you can just make a note when you entered it that there was an error in the request and that you need to correct it. You only have until January 27th to make those changes. And just as a reminder, if your LEA fails to request accommodations that are outlined on a student's plan, that is a denial of FAPE. And you are going to want to contact me, and I will provide guidance on what are some next steps that teams can do to remedy that situation. All right, Kim, next. Okay, and then another window that runs from January 23rd to March 3rd is the qualified exceptions to the deadline. We talked about this a little bit on our training yesterday, and I just wanted to hone in on it a little bit. So there's not confusion in the field. The qualified exceptions to the deadline, there's a form that links you to the form, and it outlines what are the reasons why you can use this window. It is not if you miss the initial deadline. That is not what this window is for. It's just for students who may be just transferred to your LEA, or there's a grade level classification. I know that's extremely rare, but I know as an IEP team, we have moved students grade level, so that would be a rare one. Students who maybe just had an initial an evaluation completed, and maybe they just had their initial IEP, and you were unable to submit it in the first initial window, then you could use this qualified exceptions to the deadline window. And if there's a medical emergency, then this is what you would use this window for. So it's very rare circumstances. But just to be aware, if you know of any instances like that in your LEA, this is the window you have to complete this task for their students. Okay. And just as a reminder, I went over this in our ACT training, but students do not make unilateral IEP team decisions. If the students are declining accommodations that have been agreed upon by their IEP team or their 504 team, ACT wants you to complete an irregularity report. So occasionally that happens on the day of testing. Students don't want to use an accommodation. So I would encourage you to have a plan in place on how you're going to remedy that. Probably make a phone call to the parent and see how the parent would want to proceed. And the reason why this language exists in ACT, last year there was a great court case that came out with a decision. There was a student on the day of testing decided not to use their accommodation. Parents found out, parents were upset. It went to due process, and the courts said a student themselves does not have the right to make a unilateral team decision. We need to make those decisions with administrators and parents involved. So just wanted to stress that. Next. And these are just a few screenshots. I'm not going to really go into detail because I'm hoping most of y'all have already done this, but just a reminder, ACT is looking for that alignment between your plan and what is submitted in the TAA. Next. And just if you do have any of the students who have diabetes and will be using their cell phone on the day of testing, there is a spot that ACT has added this year to mark that. And you would just submit their health service plan that hopefully is on file with the school nurse. And just another reminder, the TAA was updated. ACT is only looking for just one copy of whatever student plan is on file. Next. Okay, there are more timing options this year. ACT has pushed out just to try to closely align the timing option as one that is specified as opposed to marking other. That can just kind of delay the approval process. Go ahead, next.
You have a question in the chat.
Okay, let me put my glasses on. Okay, so that's a great question, Melanie, and that actually has come up from a couple of other LEAs this week. So on those consent forms, at the bottom of the consent form is a place to document if you've made just verbal communication. So my suggestion would be today, have the students' case managers get with those kids, call the parents right there on the phone, have a quick conversation. If you get that verbal approval on the phone, that's all you need. Sign the form, I would just put on there, called parent on January 19th. She agreed to whatever, and keep that on file. That's all you need. You don't need to get the parent in person to get a signature. So that would be my emergency plan. I would not be expecting at this point today to get a parent signature. Get that verbal confirmation, literally pull those kids out of class with their case manager. That would be my plan. If you do not do that, you cannot you cannot send ACT information. So students will test without their accommodations if you don't have that approval. I would be sure that you have documentation included in a student's file. I would type out, what does IDEA look for? They look for, did you do your due diligence? So I would just document, called mom, sent this home, sent an email, left a voicemail, write down those instances. I think, if you've attempted 3 or 4 times, then that is sufficient. All right. And as always, please feel free to email me with anything, and reach out to ACT Accommodation Support Line if you're having any trouble with the ACT. Although, Melanie, I do have a tip for schools. I would really think about having the conversation with special education directors and coordinators. Instead, it could really save time. Whenever you're having a student's annual IEP and before their next annual IEP meeting that they're going to be taking the ACT, I would really encourage having those consent forms part of the documents that IEP teams are signing when parents are there. And that way you have it on file, even if that meeting, if you have an annual IEP meeting in May, sign those consent forms then. They don't expire. You can keep a copy in the student's file. And then you might also want to have a secure place where you upload them, have all those consent forms just uploaded. That way the following, next fall, when you're looking for those consents, they're all housed in one place instead of it being separate, instead of, a different person being tasked with this, get all that done at the annual IEP meeting. Just a tip, just a suggestion. That's what I would do. Take it or leave it. All right, that's it.
Okay, that's the end of our meeting. A new record, I don't know, what is it? 99 minutes, something like that. If anyone has any questions that they need to ask us really quickly, we'll stay on. We'll stay on and for a couple minutes just to see if anybody has any questions. You feel free to come off and feel free to come off mute and talk to us, or feel free to type anything in the chat. And thank you so much for your attention and your participation. And we will see you next month.
Hey, Kim, this is Katina. I just wanted to let you know, we have 2 students that we would want to do that Spanish transadaptive, however you pronounce it, test.
Okay, great. That's awesome. Just send me an email when you're planning on testing them.
Okay.
Like we said, we're still waiting. We're doing the testing of the training test with transadaption over the next week, and then as soon as we get that, then we will be we'll be sharing that information in the February training that Elise will be doing for RISE. She's also going to demonstrate how that works. And that'll also be recorded, but that we're just in that process of, it's a new feature, so it's just taking time to get uploaded. But Katina, that's
it's 2 5th graders, so we're going to be kind of not knowing what to do, so we need to really learn that. So thank you so much.
Great. So, and there's another question in here for ACT Online. When will students be loaded into sessions? Or when will sessions be created like Utah Aspire where students are automatically assigned to 4 sessions by test subject? So Brandon, are you talking specifically about ACT or are you also asking about Utah Aspire Plus? I'm not clear. But Utah Aspire, for you, ACT Online, Scott, do you know when they're going to be loaded into sessions? Okay, he's asking only about that, so.
Yeah, as I recall, it's the school level facilitator that loads them into the sessions. And so the students' rosters have all been sent to your school. And so
The students are online.
right.
However, we don't have a way to create the test sessions. Maybe I just wonder if it's the same as Aspire. Like when Aspire gets loaded in to test sessions for us and rostered, you have English, reading, math, science, and then all the students are loaded into each of those categories. So I just wondered if it was the same way or if there's a different process I need to do.
I am not personally sure because I've never actually done that myself. It was my impression that the school facilitators, and I think there's a time when that happens when they're able to do that.
Yeah, because we're not able to do it at the moment. So I would assume you
after
said,
January 30th,
yeah,
according to the for test window 1 anyway, after January 30th, facilitators will be able to create and assign students to test sessions for online testing.
okay, that's what I need to know. Thanks, that answered my question.
And
So-
remember, Brandon, Scott mentioned this earlier as well. You don't want to put everyone in sessions too early because you may have, movement in your schools with students, so you don't want to get everybody assigned prior to that.
Yeah, good tip. Thanks.
It looks like it's that deadline, that January 30th date. It looks like it's the same for all 3 testing windows. I'm just double checking. I could be wrong. No, it's March 15th for testing window 2. And so between March 15th and March 30th, facilitators will be able to assign for window 2. And for the few schools we have doing testing window 3, it's March 29th is when you'll be able to assign students. So that'll happen at each individual school at the school level facilitator.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And Christy, I noticed you just typed in the chat that you've done the ACT Online ever since it became available. If you will respond to Scott, if you're interested in helping design some of the professional learning that we're hoping to do, that would be awesome. I'm not sure what school you're from. So if you just send him an email, and I will pop his email into the chat. And then if anybody else, I noticed, George, you popped off mute. So if you had a question for us, feel free to ask us as well.
Nope, I'm good.
Thanks, George. Hey, anybody else? Okay, thank you so much, everyone. And we will see you next month.